Okay, this is part one in a video series that could go on for a little while. Perhaps you've probably guessed from the title and pictures that it's about a recent eBay acquisition of a Heathkit H8 computer with its H17 floppy drive, a single drive in this case, and the H9 terminal that goes with it. I've been interested obviously in computers from the late 1970s, that sort of early stage of computing as an alternate history. I've covered it before in a few of the videos where, you know, what would my life have been like if I built computer instead of electronics and stereo systems as part of my hobby. Although I was very interested in following the Logic series in the magazines, I never did get around to building one until the ZX81 in 1981. And obviously, as a text adventure fan as well, those who don't know, it'd be really nice to be able to play Crowther and Woods on a period authentic machine. Which this hadn't been a machine that had really struck me as something I was looking for. It was mainly looking for a terminal, and this was a local pickup in Monmouth of the machine. It's the H8 with its octal. It's turns out it's got its original octal entry. Later ones did have a hexadecimal, and again it was that sort of front panel that's of interest, and obviously specifically the terminal. And it came with quite a lot of manuals as well for the systems and a floppy disk. And this book, which is the reference manual that contains quite a lot, including the listings of the various parts of the EPROMs for booting the operating system, and guide for the basic and HDOS system as well. So quite a nice set of pieces to be had. So so luckily enough, as a local pickup, it maybe just didn't seem to attract too many bids, so it didn't become too expensive. I thought for a fair price for a machine that the seller said had not been powered on, which of course is quite important with machines of this age. So lockdown was ending. There was some freedom of movement again in Wales, so it's about an hour up to from Barry to Monmouth to pick it up, where I met a very nice gentleman, Mark, who told me it was his late father's. So I'm very pleased to be able to try and put this back together and sort of ensure that this carries on. Stephen Feather was the original builder, so Mark told me, and was probably been in the attic for quite some time, so he wasn't sure what his condition was, and as we'll see, unfortunately I think he had suffered some problems in the past, maybe even an attempt to restart it many years ago, which had resulted in some problems that we'll work through over the series to get it back working again. So when I got it home, it's quite a significant piece, so probably won't be many on the table episodes for a while, because this pretty much occupies it. Once you put some test equipment with it as well, it's occupying the dining table and has done for quite a few weeks now. There's a significant repair. The inside, it's my theory that perhaps this was bought in two halves, and we'll explore that a little bit later. The 8519381 is the CPU card, the 8080 card. There's 4K on which is the standard on the 8K static RAM, so it would have been the cheapest, perhaps first purchase. The H816 is 16K static RAM with some nice ceramic and gold chips, and I suspect that and the controller board for the floppy drive controller were maybe bought later as a pair. The original 885 serial I/O with cassette tape may or may not have been bought with the original set, and we'll see why as we move through. A bit of another view of the RAM cards. and the main CPU card removed from the machine. You can see here the technique that they used for creating the heatsink is for the regulators is to use the metal mounting bracket on the left hand side, and on the right we can see the Harbor bus connectors. And look, it's got my very own chip on it, the 74S438N, otherwise known as TIM8238. One of the early things you'll find if you do some research on these range of machines on the internet is the Society of 8-bit Heathkit computer users. It's Google groups, and lots of really good information available from them. There are as well 3 issues of the Remarks magazine, which is a modern version of the original Remark magazine, and probably a good place to start if you've just managed to acquire H8. Their first issue is all about them and sort of getting them back, so it's a good background. Wish I'd found that first. But hopefully that'll save you some research. I will put links to all of this in the comments below the videos, I usually do. So there is also they maintain a list of quite significant resources and links to documentation, schematics, disk images from the user group and from Heathkit themselves, some KiCad project files to build Heathkit H8 boards, and although check out the group because there's some more modern ones as well. So there's quite a lot of resource available on the net to be able to look around these machines, although mostly US based. Haven't really come across many UK owners yet, so if someone watching this is a UK owner, please drop a note below, and maybe we can form the Heathkit H8 owners group in the United Kingdom. Okay, so there is a Facebook group as well with about 43 members that covers the range of machines. There is a larger Heathkit group as well, which occasionally mentions the machines. It covers all of the Heathkit. For those who don't know the Heath company, it's worth a little bit of online research perhaps. I think they started 1920s with an aircraft kit, like a real aircraft, flying one. So they went around for quite some time. Benton Harbor based, which of course is the name of the bus on the H8 is the Benton Harbor, and is the name of the basic that comes with it, Benton Harbor Basic. Very beautifully created kits that look absolutely stunning. I remember some of them from back in the day. We also have to wonder how Stephen would have been aware of these machines. Obviously the electronics magazines of the day was probably the first place to take a look, so well, let's take a look at the electronics magazines. So how would Stephen become aware of the Heathkit range? Big part of 1970s electronics hobbyists was electronics magazines like Practical Wireless. We've looked at a few issues in other episodes. This one's from November 1978. And really they did cover, although it was the one with the MK, this issue, and Practical Wireless was used by Sinclair to advertise the MK14 kit. It's a bit of a surprise because they tended not to be more general electronics. It was really the radio origin. But if you look at Wire Programmable Calculator article, Introduction to Logic, and IC of the Month, which is actually an FM chip, but and a special offer to buy the Commodore PR100 programmable calculator. So they did cover a huge range, not just audio and stereo systems like this one, Rimbaud Music Center build. There was a lot of basically general coverage, and here very early on is an advert for Heathkit with their digital trainer kit, which I think is a 6800 based one. It's quite nice. And if you look at the Heathkit catalogue, this advertised here, on the front is the 16-bit computer that they were doing. and the disk drive as well was visible. So it was obviously easily available, and in fact if you look at it, there was a Heathkit Electronics Centre at 233 Tottenham Court Road and Bristol Road, Gloucester. Now Gloucester's not that far away from Monmouth, so chances are it was easy to go to the actual shop, so it's possible it was bought from there. So big part of it is the catalogue, of course. There is an advert in here as well, much smaller, doesn't cover the computers, but catalogues were the big thing that you would send for anyway. You know, these are from slightly later, from 2008, 2009, the last Hills catalogue, but you know, full of useful product photographs and technical details. So most electronics people had these, and of course the big daddy. This is a 98, 99 Maplins, but it's a pretty juicy bit of information in there on just about everything from, you know, radio and engineering, electronics, computing, books. I've still got that tool actually, the coax cable stripping tools. So loads of everything, and fun enough, the fire glow bulb is the one that's in my tester. So just flicking through it, you know, you've got just about everything you can get with the specs and engineering designs, and of course the pinouts, which is the biggest thing it was for, because it really was the only place to get your pinouts and kits as well. You know, storage boxes, still selling valves and valve bases. Sockets, test kit equipment. It was just everything in there. So you know, you'd have sent for the catalogue. So you either went to the store or sent for a catalogue, much like most of us, I think, and would have found the offer for the computer. So who knows? The electronics magazines are one option, but I do remember back in the 70s, as I was looking at computing magazines, that you could buy American journals like Byte, you know, being this sort of fat, full of interesting information. This particular issue, I don't have any copies left, but this one helpfully provided by archive.org from July 78, for example. The contains an advert from Heath for the H17 floppy drive expansion. News of that release, and I'm sure other issues, if we researched it, would contain these sort of colour adverts. And it's another way that you, as a sort of person from the United Kingdom, become available of the Heathkit range of computers. And I think certainly if you had any interest at all in electronics and radio, you'd have been well aware of the Heathkit range anyway. So a couple of different avenues where you would have come across these machines back in the day. Obviously, it's not that far from Monmouth to Bristol Road, so you could have bought it that way, perhaps by visiting the centre. So it's not an impossibility, or been aware of it through people, or maybe even have done some work, as apparently he was an electrician, so may have been involved in the area indeed. Quite an interesting site. The factory was only actually used on the site there by Heathkit and Schlumberger until 1976, when Heathkit was sold to Zenith, and they moved out the factory then, and that was when the Bristol Road site in Gloucester became more common. But again, useful little site, some interesting stuff about the background of Heathkit in the UK, with some stories of his work in the factory and his dad's place there as well. He's also got a number of useful PDFs online, which are some of the sort of typical Heathkit quality you'd have got on how to build them. But with a UK side, this is an earlier one from the early 70s. But it's typical sort of quality of documentation they provided. If you hadn't maybe gone that way and you'd have done the catalogue, as possibly from the video, then we would have seen, probably you would have ended up with a Heathkit catalogue. This one's an American one from autumn for the British reader, 1978, but it features the H8 on the front and its H17 drive. This is a twin drive system, obviously. So they provide everything, and they may recognise the colour version of the photograph with the H11, which is the 16-bit PDP based machines, which are quite interesting. But the Heathkit H8 as a set would have been quite an expensive machine. 6 evenings they reckon you could build it in. It's quite interesting. That's quite long evenings, I think. And $379. I couldn't find any pricing, UK pricing, easily online, but usually, in my experience, the US dollar price is very similar to the UK pound price, no matter what the exchange rate is. And if you take that, for, to put that into perspective, that sort of price there is, if we did H8, the H85 serial card, and the 4K RAM, that would have been $629, so about 300 UK pounds at the time on the exchange rate. But if you scale that up to the full set, once you've added in the disk drive and the monitor and everything else, in 2021 pricing, you're talking about £5,300 worth of equipment. And the reason I think maybe he would have bought it in 2 halves is the H8 itself would have been perhaps initially floppy based, but the disk drive does add some significant extra features, including the manual and the disk. But in sort of the disk that's supplied with it is dated from 1979, and there was quite a significant drop in the value of the dollar against the pound in July 79. And I could have saved quite a few hundreds of pounds on the price of adding those extra peripherals to what was probably already a running machine. I may be wrong, but it's certainly maybe a clue as to why such a significant bit of extra hardware was added to the H8, and how it may have evolved from an original kit. All speculation, of course, but this particular catalogue extract is available on the website I gave earlier for the Society, and is well worth a little look through, and gives both systems, the H11 and the H8, coverage. So I expect you're interested to see how the reconstruction's going so far. As I said, this is going to be a few parts really, but let's see what day 1 and day 2 brought on the attempt to get this machine back to life, shall we? Well, once the PSU is turned on, obviously I've checked the capacitor, the large one. We're getting some voltage readings which I photographed on the tips of the capacitor there, so about -19 plus 19, good stable, just about 10 volts off of that cap. I'll power it very slowly with a little 5 volt supply, and did a little bulb to take the inrush current. Smoke from the transformer, so it's been running for a while, so looking promising. We shall see, leave that now for a little while, capacitor to get a bit of exercise. It hasn't gone pop, obviously there's little or no load on it at the moment, so we need to start applying some load and some regulators to see if we can take it down, and see how it goes. So we could be in for a working supply on the main unit. Well, with the front panel card plugged back in, we've got the power on light on it, and the voltage is holding steady at 10 volts, so that card's not shorting the machine out. So getting there slowly. Maybe we can try a CPU card next. Now, I was making quite good progress, so we've time to plug in the CPU card and see what happened. Unfortunately, there was a bit of a smell and quite a lot of heat being generated, and I should have done a bit of a closer visual inspection of that CPU card than I did. I can't believe I missed the obvious 2 spots that may have been a problem. As you can see, this tantalum is obviously faulty, and I was a little bit concerned that maybe the CPU was damaged because of the chip on it, but that later proved not to be an issue, as we can see. Here we go then. All the tantalum caps have been replaced on the CPU card. Reinserted the CPU and the clock chip. The bus decoder chip. We power on, and we should see the 112 light come on, and indeed we do, which is the MON light. So that means we've succeeded in the first step of the construction manual. Now we need a RAM card to make it work, I think. So what's the chances of the RAM card working? Let's have a good look at the tantalums first. I've got a couple left, I think. Okay, with the RAM card in, I've checked the tants actually aren't blown on that board, and I've checked that it's good stable 5 volts, well 4.89, 4.90 on the 5 volt rails, so it's okay. And we've got that 4th light flickering on and off, which is ion, and mon is doing and run is going and power. So I'll have a little look in the manual. We've got no display though, so that could either be the front panel faulty. It's only 2 tantalums on there, I think, but they look different design and they don't look blown. And the electrolytic looks okay, and I'm reading a good stable 5 volt on the rail there. I don't think that's probably changed. You've got a ground rail, yeah, and then a 5 volt rail. Yeah, 5.1 volts from the regulator on that board. So okay, so looks like we may have a bit of a hiccup. A little bit more reading. Get in there though, slowly. So, I keep saying so, don't I? So, we come to, I think, the end of part 1, and we've got the machine to a starting state, shall we say, back to a fairly basic environment, and we leave it now till part 2 to go into a bit of detail about why there's no display, and hopefully maybe even get as far as looking at some of the other cards and the disk system, and perhaps an initial assessment of the H9 terminal, although that may even have to wait until episode 3. So till next time, thanks very much for watching. I really appreciate comments and any contributions down below. Speak to you soon. Bye.